private sector and how to fight for patients' rights is something that People's Movement has still not fully, come out with a good strategy. We need to learn what kind of forms of struggles which are going to be effective when we are interacting with the private sector. We have been pretty good in interacting with the government, interacting with the public sector, but we do not have enough understanding and enough experience about how to do it with the private sector. And in a country like India and many others in the developing world, where the private sector has become very big, we need to learn how to do it in different ways. And so today's session is going to tell you many of the experiences of the people who are at the grassroots level, who are working directly with the patients, who have gone to the private sector, and they have found problems. So that is, I think, very, very important. The other part is that is also how, based on those experiences, how to do advocacy for the patient's rights at the larger level. I think these two things will be combined here, and each speaker here will be trying to provide you either the campaign they carried out about, or they will talk about the cases that they have handled in order to take this movement forward.
कमर्शियलाइजेशन का जो हाथी है इसको कोई कंट्रोल नहीं कर पा रहा, और कंट्रोल करने की कोई मैकेनिज्म यहाँ पर नहीं है.
She's talking about the NHRC, which is the National Human Rights Commission. That happened. The hearing that happened in Mumbai was supposed to actually have included testimonies from patients who have right violations, not only from the public but also from the private health sector. However, in spite of waiting till 9:30 that night, it was suddenly announced that they would only listen to cases from the public health sector, and there were more than 20 patients who had waited patiently the whole night, the whole day, but they were not given a hearing. So we heard some truly horrifying stories about patient rights violations in private sector. The first pillar of our campaign was to document these stories. Some truly striking cases were those of patients, for example, whose operation was changed, or the right on the operating table. Instead of going in for an angioplasty, she was told that angioplasty needed to be done for the kidneys. Or there were also cases where an operation was continued even though the patient was dead. And there were, when the patient's relatives complained, they were actually thrashed and thrown out. So cases like this even made us more determined to document this and to disseminate that this kind of violations are happening unchecked in private hospitals. So we've collected around close to 30 stories from across India, predominantly Maharashtra, and published a book that is going to be coming out shortly, and the book is titled Horpad in Marathi, which means agony or turmoil, talking about different kind of case violations like the ones that have been mentioned there. So we did this really innovative activities in the campaign in which we conducted a ballot. We asked almost more than 20,000 people voted, and the results showed that almost all these people wanted regulations and transparency and rate regulation in the private health sector. Along with that, we also had a very innovative activity which we called Jadoo Ki Jhappi. Essentially, it means a hug of magic, in which the magical hug in which we approach doctors and try to get them on board. We did not want it to be a confrontational doctor versus patient thing. Instead of that, we actually went, hugged the doctors and told them to get on our side and help our rights. We also did a one-day-long patient satyagraha. So after a lot of advocacy with the government, in the National Human Rights Commission came up with a 17-point exhaustive patient rights charter in mid-2018. It was pending adoption by the Union Health Ministry for over 6 months. Nothing was happening. Yeah, and the last thing that we are doing here is we are organizing a national public hearing, a Jan Sunwai, on the private health sector in the coming months.
Since I was a victim, I felt there was a big gap in the healthcare sector, which I need to do my bit on it. So in 2013, I joined PBT India, and the most important thing is there is a widespread corruption in healthcare and medical regulatory body, which is the MCI, which is having deep impact on the society and the economy. Now, this council has completely failed to regulate healthcare in the country. And I'll tell you what is the problem. There is an alarming drop in the personal conduct and ethical behavior of the doctor, which the council is supposed to regulate, but the council has completely failed to punish the doctor, has completely failed to take any disciplinary action against the doctor. And in this regard, I would say that on the ethics dimension, the council from 1963 onward to 2009, that's almost 45 years, has already blacklisted 109 doctors for medical negligence and medical malpractice. Coming to disciplining the doctor, there is a MCI. MCI has laid down very detailed code of ethics for doctors, but it is mostly observed in the breach. Now, the medical code of ethics regulation of MCI 2002 says that they have to maintain good medical practice, they have to maintain the medical records, they have to use generic names of drugs, observes and comply to law passed by the state on the medical practice, but most of this are observed in the breach. Now, I will go into another aspect, which is the genesis of the problem. See, the basic reason why there is so much corruption in healthcare is that the government spending in healthcare is one of the lowest in India. It is, 1.3% or 5% of the GDP, which is one of the lowest anywhere in the world. This has created a demand-supply imbalance, because the demand for service is so high and the supply is so less that it has opened the whole healthcare open to corruption. Now, another aspect of this problem is there is a public-private imbalance, because if you see, 65% of the operational beds are in the private sector, and 75% of the spending of the Indian household on healthcare is in the private sector. Whereas we are a low-income country, most of the poor and the middle class first go to a government hospital, and when every facility is in the private sector, they are in a way debarred from good healthcare services. Now, I'll just touch upon the lack of transparency and accountability once again of the ethics. See, MCI has completely failed to honor its contractual, legal and ethical obligations. The reason of this problem is, I'll tell you what, most of the members of MCI are nominated from big corporate hospitals and private practice. Even the members who are nominated from the state state and the center are doctors who are basically working with top corporate hospitals, or they are into private practice. So what they do is, when they get a complaint of somebody, they happens to be their own people, so they close their rank and they shield their own people. And now, because of very low punitive action against the doctor, it has given rise to a situation where doctors have been emboldened to indulge in reckless practice. There's a culture of impunity among the doctors. They know that their action will not invite any serious repercussions. So this problem has become rampant. The whole healthcare system is extremely broken. We all need to come together.
Now, in all this, we intend to place the patient at the center of healthcare, because I don't know what you can call a hospital that does not have patients. And in the private sector, they thrive on making money from the patients. And yet, they really don't give the respect, or they don't accord the respect that the patient indeed deserves. And I have said before that according to Gandhi, he says, the customer is king, and the customer can decide to take their money wherever they so wish. But that comes with a lot of empowerment. So, in the Ugandan context, where we are still using medical negligence or the law of torts as a legal framework, and when you look at that, what is the prosecution success rate of the violations? They are very minimal. So, when we also look at the health sector, just like Uganda's case is, the health workers have even blackmailed government. They tell government, we will work elsewhere because after all the salary you're giving us is not enough. And every other time they are industrial actions. Just like the proverbial fight of elephants. Whenever the two elephants are fighting, that is government and the health workers, what is happening to the patients? WHO says, one, they're supposed to be one doctor for every 1,000 patients. But that is not the case in Uganda. The human resources for health are overburdened. They even work beyond the time that is required. Health work or specialized care is only concentrated in the urban areas. So health service provision is an amenity that you only come to access in the city centers. But also the health workers who perhaps have just studied and they are consultants, they cannot want to go and work in the villages where there is no electricity. Some of them are young people, they want to watch soccer, Premier League and the like, and that cannot happen there. But some of them have just married and they don't want their young families to stay in the villages. So that also is the other challenge. The health sector is, I don't know whether this is English, but it is clinicalized. That they are on, just like carpenters who think every problem must be solved by a hammer and cutting off. When we are promoting the Patients' Charter and the enabling law, which is the Patients' Rights and Responsibilities Bill, what is it that we want to achieve? We are demanding of government that they include in the constitution the right to health. That is not in Uganda's constitution. But including it in the constitution is not enough. We have to have the phrasing that makes health rights and goods claimable entitlements. And that if anybody is denied those entitlements, they can go to court. And that's why we talk about claimability and justiciability.
So I'm going to talk about clinical trials and what's happening to these clinical trials. Out of 50 lakhs medical negligence and error, maybe there are cases also included clinical trials, just due deaths and adverse reaction due to clinical trials. So I'm going to talk about clinical trials and what's happening to these clinical trials. Out of 50 lakhs medical negligence and error, maybe there are cases also included clinical trials, just due deaths and adverse reaction due to clinical trials. So already Saku told about there is a patient rights charter which includes also rights of the clinical trial subjects. What are the things? So when we started, there was no informed consent. Without informed consent, clinical trials are happening. Now there is a video recording. There is no information available to the clinical trial subjects about the no informations. It is compulsory to provide product information sheets to the clinical trial subject whom you are enrolling for the clinical trials. It was not there. And also there is nothing about the side effects, what are the trials. It has to be available with the patients. But the consent form was 1 page and the English consent form was around 25 and 30 pages. The translation was bring to 1 page. So, and after this whole campaign started, they were trying to start giving a consent form to some of the subjects, but it was very less 1 page. Also the signatures and thumb impression was also changed. And also the insurance paper, it's written somewhere that insurance paper is allowed, but it's not. So we are demanding these rights should be given to the clinical trial subjects before enrolling the clinical trials. And also the consent form should be, lots of consent form we try to assess, it's not signed. Any of the subjects was in the hospital and the legally representative, whoever the persons who have not signed, it's without sign. Also ethics committee has not approved some of the clinical trials consent forms. It was not approved by the consent forms. So we are demanding that it has to be approved, and also there should be separate consent forms also for the clinical trials on children and mentally challenged participants and others. So in 2013, when we filed the case, January 2010, Supreme Court has directed to stop all the clinical trials, and there was 157 clinical trials was approved on 2013. The Supreme Court has stopped, and they start. So first, let's establish the mechanism to strengthen the mechanism for the safety of the clinical trial subjects. They also talk about, then only you can start, and they put mandatory audiovisual recording of the informed consent, also the reporting of the adverse events. This is the 3 parameters under clinical trials is allowed in India now: risk benefit analysis, unmet medical need of the country, and innovations versus existing therapy.
Mass hysterectomies across Karnataka. So you name a district, you name a taluk, you'll find doctors practicing. Apart apart from that, what we also see this we find in Chikmagalur, Gulbarga, Haveri, Hassan, different districts. But the place where when you're talking of medical negligence, you will also imagine a case where surgeon performs a surgery where the anesthetist pushes the dentures into the throat. Huh? And imagine you go for a simple test in a big hospital and you're there for next 3 years. I mean, you are not woken up. 3 years in vegetative state. Simple test, not even for a treatment. And another patient, another person who lost her eyesight. These are the cases which we have been working around, and anyway, this last case we lost this case in Karnataka Medical Council. I mean, it's a simple fact that this is not done by the doctor. Okay. Anyway, overcharging, keeping the bodies is all, especially with the bringing them to the rule book or even punishing them. So there's no law. In fact, in Gulbarga, what we had actually came across is when the district commissioner wanted to file cases against the doctors, you know what the act they used? They used the PCP-NDT Act, because there's no regulatory framework. Which act should be good? And non-maintenance of records. Is that the in? So in one case, what we actually found is there was a punishment of 25,000 rupees where for a neonatal death. Only 25,000 rupees, which again the doctor went on an appeal, saying that even he won't pay that, because if he even pays it, that's it's a shame. It's a shame. And there was a natural response. So natural response for this issue, which is to address and bring different kinds of people to address this problem.
I think a lot of discussions are happening in silos. The health sector regulation, we talk about private sector regulation. There is a problem, huge problem in that. We need to consider the public also, because one of the counter arguments during the KPME amendment, what the private sector are posing, why only you're punishing us? There's a lot of issues going on in the public sector. It's a regulation. But the counter argument with the civil society was the logic of private sector is different, the logic of public sector is different, but the problem is the same.
In a democratic country like India, and I think hopeful maybe happening in other countries too, it's very important to fight the battle for credibility. If we keep talking about public sector without looking at what people want, you are going to be in trouble. And in India, we see that people are ideologically brainwashed to go to the private sector. Whether we like it or not, although we will, all the praise for the public sector for ourselves, people actually are going to the private. How are you going to stop it? People have a lot of illusions, and these politicians know about it. Why they want to buy services for the poor people from the private sector? Because they know that poor people want to go there. It's like telling somebody that I come and have a cup of tea with me in 5-star hotel, and they say, oh yeah, really, you are a good person. This is how the politicians are working. So we need to work on the private sector in order to create the disillusionment of people with the private sector. If we don't do that, and if we don't bring out all the problems of the private sector in the public domain and fight a democratic battle to tell them that disillusions is wrong, this is seduction of yours, rather than actually really doing good for them. I think that is the battle that we are talking about when we are saying that private sector should be regulated and patient rights should be preserved.